Well, I've been waiting quite a while to do this, so let's get started. I'm going to break this down into two videos. Do the rear kit first, and then we'll do the front kit in another video. So for now, let's get started on the rear. So the first thing you want to do is for sure measure all four corners, just to get a reference of where the vehicle started at before you put the kit on and got started with it. It's just a good benchmark. I do it every time I put coilovers on. So I've never used a QA1 kit before, so I was a little eager to see how the thing went together and how easy it all assembled. First thing I do with any time I do these kits is to always put the coilovers together on the bench. Just makes it a little bit easier. You can kind of adjust it a little bit as far as getting some ride height started, but at least you can start both sides at the same height when you put it on. One thing for sure, anytime you're working with aluminum pieces here, always use some good anti-seize on there. It just helps things when you adjust it later on and keeps things from seizing up down the road after you get a few hundred or a few thousand miles on them. Once the coilovers are together, you can go ahead and start the disassembly of everything on the rear end. Now, I'm sure the instructions probably tell you this. Only do one side at a time, one piece at a time. It kind of helps you keep everything aligned, keeps the differential underneath there in the same spot. It just makes things a lot easier. So for sure, one coilover at a time, one shock at a time, one control arm at a time, just makes it simple. Obviously, safety first here. Make sure you got good jack stands underneath there, and I always throw the wheels under the frame as well for kind of another little added piece of safety. The instructions were kind of like a regular set of instructions from most manufacturers. You can kind of tell they weren't written really by a user that had never installed the kit before. They were kind of written by a engineer type, so they're a little cumbersome. This coilover bracket for the rear or for the bottom is kind of a nice piece, very nicely welded. It installs where the factory shock mount goes. Tighten it down, and then you have to drill a 1/2 inch hole in the top so you can have both of them kind of tied into the top and the bottom on this bracket, instead of, I guess, having to break a welder out and weld the two together. I think I'll leave it like this for now, but if I was going to redo it again, I probably would have just welded it in place. But drilling a 1/2 inch hole really wasn't that complicated, so really not that big of a deal. One thing the instructions were a little vague on was how this bracket gets lined up to the shock mount bracket. They just kind of tell you to eyeball it up or to feel it so the edges kind of line up with the shock mount. I guess that's probably okay. It's probably close enough. But there again, if I was to do it again, I probably would have kind of measured it and welded it in place so it was perfect, had the shock alignment perfectly where I wanted it. Now this top bracket here is a little difficult. It butts right up against the shock mount frame there. It's a little, like I said, it's a little difficult not to get the first two bolts started. Those are fairly easy. That third bolt on the outside closest to the frame rail is where it gets a little difficult. Fortunately, in my situation, it was a little bit simpler, but in most situations, you're going to take a little bit of time to get that nut started on the top of it. For me, because the roll cage is through the bed, I had already had it cut out, so it was real easy to access that bolt head. A quick note on that top coilover bracket. That takes a 5/16 drill bit to drill that third hole, the one that's closest to the frame. Again, not very complicated, but it is very close to the floor. So if you're on a Chevelle with a trunk, you need to be a little careful how far you push up on that drill bit, because you will get into trunk material fairly quickly, and If you've got a finished trunk, you certainly don't want to push a drill bit up through there. So just be a little careful with that. And then, like I said, it's just kind of a little bit complicated to get that nut on the top to get it started. But I think with a little bit of time, you can get your fingers in there and probably get it done okay. The rest of the installation on the coilovers goes pretty simple. Everything went together really well. QA1 supplies all the hardware and everything you need within the kit, so certainly it all just kind of really fell into place. Very impressed with certainly the coilovers. Like I said, I've never used this brand before, so for me, I was kind of judgmental on every little step, and so far it's kind of passed every little test. The control arms are a little bit different. They give you, or you can buy separately, those braces to help brace the control arms from top to bottom. These bolts that go through there are super long. It's the only complaint that I have with the kit. They're just way too long. They could probably be cut down by, I don't know, at least probably half an inch. They're just too long coming out of there. Maybe even 3/4 of an inch. Not that bad. That frame brace is kind of a bit of a pain to get kind of adjusted and slipped on there. So, maybe with a little bit shorter bolt, it wouldn't be too bad. Maybe it'll be a bit easier, but the instructions on these were completely unclear. Not very good pictures. So before you crawl underneath there and start working on it, these are a good idea to kind of get a good idea where they fit in. If you don't, you're gonna be kind of scratching your head as exactly where they go and kind of unsure of how they get there. But there again, great little piece there. There's a couple of different ways of doing it. This just happens to be QA1 style of doing it. And it's they're adjustable and going to be a nice addition to keep the differential and everything all straight underneath there, especially under hard launch torque, the aggressive driving that handling kit's going to give you. To finish up, I just kind of snugged everything down just a little bit. You certainly don't want to torque everything down until you get the full weight of the car down on it, and certainly kind of let it settle a little bit. Again, I'm pretty impressed with this so far. I just started on the front, and we'll get that video up here pretty soon, but if the front goes half as nice as the rear went, this is going to be a very, very nice kit to adjust, to drive on, and certainly the installation was good. So for sure, definitely check out QA1.net. If you're interested in these kits. If you need to talk to anybody on their tech line, they were super helpful when it came to discussing different spring rates for the coilovers. I was very impressed by their customer service, and I've had no issues with the kits and the kit, and I haven't had to call back for anything. So certainly feel confident giving them a call. They were super helpful. You can definitely tell they're car people. They were just very, very knowledgeable and very, very helpful. So anyway, that's the rear kit. We'll get the front kit on here pretty quickly and get that video up. But for now, if you got any questions, please leave them down below. Like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. And we'll be back with another video soon. Thanks.